Hello, and welcome to Biblical Scrolls, where we take a deeper dive into the hard to interpret, the obscure, or even the misinterpreted passages of Scripture. We will also look at apocryphal and pseudepigraphal texts and other historical manuscripts. We'll be using a variety of sources, so if you're committed to just one version of the Bible, this channel may not be for you. Now let's dig into today's passage. Today's passage is Matthew 5:38 through 42. We're going to start by reading this in the Amplified Version. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, punishment that fits the offense. But I say to you, do not resist an evil person who insults you or violates your rights. But whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other toward him also. Simply ignore insignificant insults or trivial losses and do not bother to retaliate. Maintain your dignity, your self-respect, your poise. If anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, let him have your coat also, for the Lord repays the offender. And whoever forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks of you, and do not turn away from him who wants to borrow from you. Okay, to start with, this is a part of the Sermon on the Mount. The chapter starts off with what are called the Beatitudes. But then by the time we get to verse 17, Jesus flips the Old Testament Jewish tradition on its head. He says he didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. Then he calls out the law itself, like, do not murder, traces it back to the heart issue, don't be angry, or do not commit adultery, to do not lust. He focuses on the heart issue of the individual and not the actual law itself. So by the beginning of this passage here that we started reading, verse 38, he says, rather than an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, he says, don't retaliate, maintain your dignity and your poise. So the Old Testament verses for this was Exodus 21:24 and Leviticus 24:20. So the people misuse this verse as an excuse to retaliate for personal or military offenses, not legal offenses, which what it was intended for. Verse 39 says, whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. So obviously this is a sign of disrespect. It is today, and it was back then as well. But Jesus was saying, go above and beyond to reconcile with this person. The principle is not to seek retaliation, but rather reconciliation. Verse 40, if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, let him have your coat also, for the Lord repays the offender. So this is a flashback to Exodus 22, 26, and 27, and we're going to look at that. 26 and 27, it says, if you ever take your poor neighbor's robe in pledge, you must return it to him before sunset. But that is his only covering. It is his clothing for his body. In what shall he sleep? And when he cries to me for help, I will hear him, for I am compassionate and gracious. This is where the expression, give him the shirt off your back, comes from. So the robe or the shirt is an undergarment, nothing underneath it. Jesus is saying, give him your coat or outer garment also. Jesus is saying here, be gracious because I am gracious. Go above and beyond. Then finally, verse 41 and 42, and we'll read those again. It says, and whoever forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and do not turn away from him who wants to borrow from you. So the Roman soldiers were authorized to force people to carry their equipment and their backpacks 1 mile. And they would do this as well. They hated the Jews and would love to inconvenience them. Jesus said, go with them 2 miles. He told them this not to say that being a believer means you must subject yourself to constant abuse, but rather to make this point. I, Jesus, will do this very soon for you. I will be wrongfully accused and abused on some made-up charges, but I will not make an issue of it or prosecute my offenders and abusers, but rather forgive them and love them and give of myself anyway. He is saying, I will go the extra mile for you. I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe even learned something. Please subscribe and give a thumbs up. The topics on this channel are difficult, and sometimes there's a difference of opinions, but that's okay. Be blessed, be encouraged, and I'll see you in the next video.